Hi there, it's Jason Gorman from Codemanship here with the second of 6 special screencasts to celebrate 6 years of Codemanship. Today's screencast is a relatively short one. I just wanted to illustrate a good habit that I try to encourage people to get into when they're doing test-driven development. And that habit is when you're writing a test, start by writing the test assertion first and work your way backwards to the setup. So ask the question that you want to ask and then work backwards to a setup that leads up to asking that question. So it's a very neat way of turning your thinking around. So you're thinking specifically about the what, about the actual meaning of the test, and the setup only exists to support that. So totally test driven, if you like. So let's illustrate this. I'm writing a test for a DVD library object. And we're writing a test for donating titles to the library that very simply says when a title is donated to the library, then at the end of that we should find the title is in the library's collection. So let's write a test assertion first. Let's imagine that we've got a library object. Now you can see by the red squiggly line there that library doesn't exist as a local variable or a field or anything that the compiler knows about or can see. So what we do is we give ourselves permission to work backwards from there. Let's start by creating a library. Now it's assuming it's Boolean, of course, because it's assert true, but it's not. It's a library. We're not done yet. And golden rule of TDD, we don't declare a line of source code until we have a failing or a broken test that requires it. So at this point we can give ourselves permission to declare this class library, which is in the source code, not part of the test code. Okay. And we're going to imagine that we've got a method that allows us to query the titles collection. So let's declare that method. Again, it'll probably assume that it's Boolean because we're inside a method that has a Boolean parameter. But in actual fact, it's going to return a list of title objects. Let's just import. Let's create this class title first. Now I'm creating this as a class, as you'll see. I'm going to be creating a mock title, but because I'm using Mockito, it doesn't need to be an interface. And I'm not a big fan of declaring interfaces willy-nilly. Let's just make that null for now so that it compiles. Okay, and we can move on in writing our test assertion. So what we're asking is, does this collection contain the title that we donated? Okay, so now we need to declare that local variable title. So we're working our way backwards. And you can see as we're doing this, that Eclipse kind of is built with this in mind. As far as the Java editor is concerned, it's built with working backwards in mind. You can see there are all these natty little features. If I Control Z my way back and we go back to title, if I press Control 1, you can see that there are some suggestions there that have the intelligence to understand that I am working backwards, that it's a reference to something that doesn't exist yet. So let's create that local variable title and let's instantiate these objects. So this is going to be a new library object, so it's the real deal, it's the real library. Title, on the other hand, as you can see, there's this option there to work backwards. I'm going to actually create a mock title, not because I actually want to write a test about the interaction between library and title, but purely because I just want a placeholder for a title for the purposes of this test. I don't want an implementation. So let's mock this. Now, again, working backwards, I'm going to declare the reference I need to the mock method in Mockito. Now that the test requires that I do so. So in order to make progress with the test, and then finally what I'm going to do is I'm going to donate the title to the library, which is the action that we're actually testing, not the library title. There we go. And again, a red squiggly line says that we need to declare that donate method, and that all looks good to me. Okay, so theoretically what we have here is a failing test that I wrote by starting by writing the assertion first and then working backwards from there. I'm just going to get, just because I'm a bit, you know, a bit odd about this sort of thing. What are you complaining about there? Yes, that's a bit odd. Okay, I do apologise. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly write the code. First of all, I want to see this test fail. So if I were to run this test now, in fact, if I actually just do it, if I were to run this test now, you'll see when it runs. Yes, thank you. You'll see when it runs that it fails because of a null pointer exception, because our library's accessor method for the titles collection is actually returning nothing at the moment. So just to get it to pass, let's just create a new array list of title objects so that there is at least a list. And again, you can see I'm working backwards. So it becomes a fairly sort of natural thing to do. If I run the test again, it'll fail now because our assertion is failing. If you wanted to make that more descriptive, you could use fluent assertions. You could use Hamcrest, for example. But I'm just for the sake of brevity and to keep it simple, I'm not going to do that. So to pass this test, what we need to do is, well, first of all, let's just make this a local variable. Let's call those titles. And let's now make titles a field. Okay, and now we don't want to instantiate the list every time we ask for titles because it'll all be empty every time we get it. So let's actually instantiate it in a constructor. Okay, and because it has to be the instance that we donated it, we're going to have to put something into that collection. So let's just add our title. And hopefully our test will now pass. Let me just do a bit of cleaning up. And okay, right now. Oh yes, and there's this little message chain here which is a bit worrying. So let's wrap that up. I'm not sure I wanted to do that. Okay. Yeah, that looks good. Right. Okay, and let's check that that's passing. And now I'm just going to move this across to where I think it belongs, which is on library. Okay, so we're encapsulating that message chain inside the library itself. Okay, right, so there you go. That's writing a test assertion first and working backwards from there. Some people get the hang of doing this, but then when it comes to other kinds of tests, then they go a bit strange. They suddenly forget about writing the assertion first because it's not obvious what the assertion is. So let's say, for example, we have an exceptional case. So let's say we have a test for cannot donate null titles, just as a bit of good old-fashioned defensive programming. And what we're saying for this is that if title is null when you call donate, then we would like an exception to be thrown. So the exception being thrown is what the test is about. So the assertion should be about the exception. So you would start by writing the exception part of the test. So let's call it a missing title exception, for example. And it's not working backwards for me at the moment. That's very nice. So I'll just declare it the good old-fashioned hard way. So again, part of the source code. Let's create a new class. Let's call it missing title exception, and we're actually going to let's make it a runtime exception. Okay, I think that's okay. And we'll leave that as that for now because you're complaining about something. Yes, what you're complaining about is the bad spelling. Right, with a capital E. Thank you. That's what that was all about. Right, so that is our assertion for a test that is about an exception being thrown. And all we need to do now is work our way backwards from the expected exception assertion, if you like, to whatever's going to trigger it. So if we just do something as simple as what we're saying here is that this should throw an exception. So if I run this test, yeah, expected exception, missing title exception. So this is quite an easy one to pass. If title is null, missing title exception. And we're back in the green. Okay, so let's go back to our tests. The second kind of sort of edge case test, if you like, or the second kind of test that tends to throw people is tests that involve mock objects, where we're actually using the mock objects to test that an interaction takes place. And again, people tend to get a bit of a blind spot. They get comfortable writing traditional assertions, working backwards, but then when they write a test involving mocks, they sort of start at the setup again and declare mock objects and so on and so forth. In actual fact, the way to do it, if you were going to work backwards from an assertion, the mock object equivalent of assertion is an expectation about methods being called. So you start by writing the expectations first. So let's say that our test is about the library tells the title to register a default copy. So we have copies of titles that people can borrow, and when you donate your DVD to the library, assuming that we haven't already got that title in the library, we will donate a default copy to it. So so again, we want to start by writing the assertion, but this time, because it's about an interaction, the assertion is this expectation about library telling the title to do something. So let's import the appropriate org.marquito dot verify. Okay. So we want to verify on a mock title that a certain method is called. Let's call that method, I know, register copy. Okay, and then working backwards again from this verify, we declare our local variable for title, and we now declare the register copy method. That will work fine, thank you. Let's instantiate title as a mock. So let's mock using the title class. And now what we want to do is we want to donate this title to a library. We don't have to query the library, so it can be an anonymous instance. Donate the title. So when the title is donated, that method should be invoked, which at the moment it's not. Okay, so we run that. Yeah, wanted but not invoked. So that would be working backwards from an expectation on a mock object. Pretty easy to do with Mockito. It's a bit fiddlier. There's a bit more of a dance, if you like, with some other mocking frameworks that have more steps or work differently. But still pretty much the same deal. Let's just go into library now and pass this test. So when we donate, after we've added the title to the collection, we're going to tell the title to register a copy against itself. Okay, so there you have it. That's working backwards from three different kinds of test assertion, if you like. There's the traditional test assertion that most of you are familiar with, but you also want to think about working backwards from exception cases and also working backwards from mock object expectations. So that's the second of our 6 screencasts. Hopefully the third one will appear within the next few days. So thanks very much.